let's bring more and more people into these kind of intimate conversations and speak to each other about our different experiences. And it's also quite important for us that it's not just older people, that it's younger people as well, and people who are actually making decisions on public space.
We work very hard here at trying to build an atmosphere where everybody is safe.
I feel like we're the first generation, if I could put it that way, where there is such an awareness, where you've got age-friendly cities.
As you age, that your fear of public space can become greater.
Because we always had a fabulous community.
We're social, we need friends, we need to meet people, we need to be together, we need to interact. That's really important.
So yeah, maybe I think to tease out, we'd like to begin with what is the difference between public and private space?
A lot of it comes down to what your expectations are about what you're allowed to do in that space. You know, can you hang around? Do you have to buy something? And I think people's expectations of themselves and society's expectations of them changes around the generations. You know, young people hanging around in open space, and then you have that middle generation where people are moving through a lot quicker, and then you get to older people where they might be dwelling a little bit longer in that open space before buying a coffee or whatever, you know. So I think that expectation about whether you're moving through, whether you can stick around, whether you have to buy something, and what your expectations are of yourself and other people's expectations of you is important around that public and private open space. And that has a generational aspect as well.
First thing that came to my mind is that private space was personal space. And in terms of Irish culture, we are all too squashed together. Every culture has its own space that people like to have around them. So for example, if you go into a cafe where there's space between the tables, you relax, you feel comfortable, whereas if you have to sit right next to people you don't know, you don't. Public spaces need to facilitate that within how they operate.
In a privately owned public space, such as the outdoor area of this shopping centre, we are not free to do all the things that we are free to do in a genuinely public space, because things have been determined both by the architecture and the sort of general rules of behaviour, which make it a different experience altogether from walking into the open countryside, let's say.
Are there public spaces that you've experienced that would have certain qualities that you could describe as a good public space?
The way that public space in Italy works, there's this marvellous thing, no matter what small town or village or city you're in Italy, in the evening time, every single older person, they are sitting on all those benches, they are chatting, they are very obviously the backbone of that community, and they're watching everybody, and that whole thing about engagement and who lives in your community and just the passeggiata they call it, which is just watching people walking past. We all love doing that. We're total people watchers.
Caroline and I are both members of a group called Imagine Dun Laoghaire, and one of the things we're campaigning really strongly for is a community and civic centre, and which would be a neutral space, not belonging to a church or a GAA club, and which would have facilities and services for young people, for children, for older people to come into a place where they don't have to spend €3.50 for a cup of coffee.
This project is looking actually about our relation to public space as we age. So maybe the question is, does anyone here consider themselves old?
It's actually a frame of mind. You get up one morning and you feel 90.
Exactly.
You get up another morning and you feel 20. So the day you feel 20, you do all the things you would think you'd like to do when you're 20. But when you're 90, that's the day you don't want to do anything.
All of my friends and I who are older, getting there, have one shared anxiety, and that is the feeling of being alone. And I think that's something that you come to a point when you begin to lose your friends as well as your parents, that you begin to realise the fact that you haven't got an infinite expansion of life, that you are a finite person. And I think that there's no way that that is catered to in any kind of meaningful way within our communities.
you know, while you think you have individual ideas about, you know, what getting old is about, and when you remember, you know, the way things were, that they aren't unique ideas at all. A lot of other people feel exactly the same way.
It's about kind of starting to design your life in your 20s, in your 30s, isn't it? And setting up that foundation and that framework. And that, you know, I suppose I've made a commitment to myself that I work quite hard at the moment, but I don't want my life to be my work, even though I'm quite passionate about my work. I don't want my life to be my work. So I suppose it's trying to grow community and build it, you know, from a very young age and involve everyone throughout their whole life. So, you know, people are involved in tennis clubs, golf clubs throughout their life. So you're not left at this end point, not end point, but when you're finishing work, that you're kind of left with this space.
I think community next to family is kind of the most important place to be. Community cares for one another. They do watch out. You know, if they see something amiss, well, it is still like that, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So my kids get to know some of the people living on the road.
That's right, yeah.
Because some of the older residents, they bring it out from the kids.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic because that's how my kids are learning to, you know, interact.
Yeah.
You know, and to understand community. Otherwise, they wouldn't get community because it's a busy road.
I don't know. I think now the people that live in Sean McDermott Street and that lived in Fatima Mansions and all these, they used to help one another fantastically, you know, and they pulled all them down now, and people just go in and close their doors.
And why do you think that is? Does anyone have any thoughts on that change?
Well, I think myself a lot has to do with women having to go back to work. It's grand for the women that want to, but I think when women go back to work, they come in the evening and they're tired, and it's their only chance with their children, and maybe they have to get the dinner, and they've no time for neighbours, you know.
It's a vicious circle though. Like, I would like to have half my time at home with my kids.
Of course.
I can't afford it.
Yeah.
So if I was to, like, I don't particularly want to go in and work with Ivan every single day. I have to.
You have to.
But I have to.
You have to, and I
would
think
love a happy medium of a lot more time at home with my children. We're community guards in Dundrum, and we're all about community. And for me in particular, the area that I would cover would have a lot of elderly in it, and a lot of times they're very isolated and alone. This big community and everybody in it, that person slipped through my fingers, that nobody actually knew that what they were going through or what they're sitting in, or because some of them would be in poverty and some of them would be very isolated and some of them would be depressed, you know.
Community and communication are two things that run hand in hand. Communication has changed very much to internet and social media. So people are still communicating, but they're just maybe just talking in a different way, and then people are falling through the cracks. By and large, the older people aren't as technically savvy as maybe the younger generation, and they're maybe missing out.
Hearing how people see their environment and where they are in it, it's given me some ideas on how we can go forward and how to look for and learn from the mistakes we've made in the past.
We as a generation, we have a responsibility now to start changing those spaces so that people feel like they can kind of interact together in those places.
How has community changed, and what are the role of these spaces?
I think it's really interesting that the idea that community isn't something that's fixed. You know, that when we're younger, our community is, we have different needs of community than we do when we're older, and even when we get used to a certain idea of community, that changes because people move on, new people move in, that kind of thing.
I think we have to recognise that really Irish society has changed a huge amount. It's much more diverse and it's much more fragmented in some ways, so we need something to bring all that together. But I think we have to look to ourselves to provide that kind of facility for young people, for old people, and bring them together.
I think it's really important that both age groups have, communication. Communication is the key, really.
The adventures that the gentlemen used to have over there and the fields that used to exist here, the young people nowadays are still having those adventures, but in a very different environment. Their playground is this built community. It's the Lewis tracks, it's the Lewis stops, it's the fenced off green areas and building sites and stuff like that. But it seems that their need to have that adventure hasn't diminished any. These young people are the same as you were all those years ago, but their environment is very, very different. Is it fair to say as well that as you get older, because your social network changes, and young people don't have the need to have the chat with Bob the butcher in the local butcher shop or build up any reporting because they have such strong social networks. They have so many friends, so much accessibility to others or whatever, and it's that they use spaces like Dundrum because it's acceptable for them to go in packs or in groups and use that area, whereas the local shopping centres, they're not allowed to do that. They're moved on. There isn't the space for them to do it either, and I think that as you get older, your needs change.
We're a very young society, young world globally, but we don't have the institutions that are actually designed for ageing. We don't have those structures in place. We're really just finding our way now with what might be appropriate.
Do you think Ireland is a good place to grow older?
Yes.
I don't know.
Because
I don't know. I'm not grown old.
We're extremely fortunate in Ireland to live where we do live. Our cities are not huge. We're, that we can get to the countryside or the beach very quickly. We have a good, stable political system, and we don't have those kind of worries. So it is a good place.
People want to stay in their community if they can, and really somebody with a bit of imagination could improve that kind of aspect of our lives so that people aren't feared of being isolated from their own community in a place that isn't their home.
I think we try and look after the community. I think we're still family orientated in Ireland. So as a place to live and a place to be, I think we have a lot to offer still.
So I think we're kind of coming to the time now. Thank you everyone for participating. But I think in summary, there's kind of that realization, kind of reminder all the time that yes, it's the role of designers to listen and understand, but I think it's the role of all of us. We're all aging, we're all kind of interacting, relating to each other, and it's about kind of being leaders in each of our own communities to do activities, bring people together, make people aware of things that are happening.
It's fantastic to see it beginning to be a conversation in this country.
Educating young people towards the importance of older people would be very important.
Sometimes you're so busy in your day-to-day life, you forget to sort of think about things, about why you're here, what's your purpose. I think community is one very important thing that I got from the meeting.
We need to feel connected to something, and I think we start with ourselves, and if we're connected ourselves, we're almost automatically connected with others.